Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Miss Dolores Semeraro. A big round of applause for her.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Whew. Good morning. Good morning. I'm not going to ask you to stand up and stretch and do this typical pre-Congress warm-up. So we're just going to get straight into today's keynote and start these next 2 days together. Welcome. Today, I'm here to share with you a new perspective that I hope you will welcome. I will encourage you to reflect upon the status of things, a reality check, probably a painful one, and with your help, leave you inspired and perhaps motivated to go back to your teams and start over. Let's start with one question, probably the simplest one. Why do we travel? Did you notice I put we? We all travel. We traveled to come here. We ask our clients to travel to our destinations and become tourists. We ask our clients to travel through the services of our travel agency. We ask our clients to travel to be the guest of our hotels. So why not answering that question? I answered that question 20 plus years ago when in these pictures from 2000 and probably 10, I was boarding a plane to go to China for the very first time. So this is me with my university colleagues on a very first trip on an intercontinental flight. And here I was, nearly, probably I was 21, 22 years old. You can do the math. And I was getting on a plane for the very first time. Nothing would prepare me to what I was about to experience. And the person I've become after 20 years of travel nonstop. After that trip, I never went back. Well, I did go back to pack my bag and go back to China because the travel bug got me. And I didn't say no. So when I ask myself, why do we travel? I look back at what 20 years of travel life made me. And I want to share with you, if anything, 4 pillars that I see have directed and conducted the work that I do in the industry, my personal life, my choices, my travel life. Impactful culture. When we travel, we let cultures impact us. We get to know one another. We get to know cultures and differences that otherwise we wouldn't come across. And that impact affects our life moving forward. Deeper knowledge, not just of the world around us, but also of ourselves. Because when we travel, we embrace the new. We let it affect us, we let it change us, most of the time for the good, hopefully. So we don't just get to know the world better, but we get to know ourselves better. Social growth. Imagine the growth that you experience when you travel, the growth that you ask your clients to experience when they travel. Imagine little Dolores 20 years ago went to China for the first time, got to know the Chinese culture, learned the Chinese language, went back home and shared with family, friends, and people what was China all about. And they didn't know. They couldn't know. They didn't have the privilege or the opportunity to travel. So that growth is not just ours. to keep. It's ours to give. And it's a collective growth. Together we grow socially inspired. And lastly, because that growth brings us so much knowledge and so much more understanding, the evolution of us, it's inevitable. And that's why, for me, when I look back at how far we've come in the last 20 years in the travel industry, I can only choose one word to describe this journey, and that was a human evolution. 20 years ago, the travel industry was very different from what is today. So, in today's opening address, I want to share with you why are we now sitting in this very room and discussing what is it that we can do better to travel tomorrow, to ask our clients to travel, and how can we understand them better? There's a lot of stereotype in the industry, but I always define the travel industry and the tourism as a big family industry. It is through tourism that we understand people, places, cultures, that we learn how to appreciate the different instead of fearing it. And for me, most importantly, it is through travel that we understand ourselves better, knowing that after that next very travel, we will never be the same again. So you see that recurring pattern. You understand yourself better after every trip, knowing that you have been forever changed by that experience, and therefore you keep learning about yourself. So it's never ending. My name is Dolores Semeraro, and I'm from Italy originally. I lived my last 20 years across the world, and I work in the tourism and hospitality industry, inspiring the industry to build a better tourism in the future. Let's talk about that future. I ask you, why do we travel, right? What has happened in the last two years? No more travel. Travel canceled. What happens when travel is canceled? We run out of business. And a lot of people that are perhaps not in this room today, they went down the dead end road. They did not come back. They closed down their business and they learned a hard lesson. When there is no travel, there is no motion. People don't move. There's no exchange. There's no cultural evolution. Everything stops. But let's look at what we've learned out of these 24 months of no travel. I could have brought you experiences and examples from failures, because it's from failures that we learn our next step. Ah, I could have done that better. But it's also from success stories that we also learn, and we have a success stories right in this room. We will hear about it later. So let's look at how that lack of travel has affected the people we are asking to travel, our clients. These are four pillars that have been defined as the guiding principles that travelers use nowadays to redefine their priorities when it comes to traveling. Health, of course, it's a given. You can have all the money in the world and not your health. And the last 24 months, if anything, they taught us this lesson in a hard way. Relationships. We have seen families separated by isolations and lockdowns. We have seen families come together because finally they could spend time together during this prolonged time of being at home. We've seen relationship getting stronger and relationship going opposite ways. Either way, it's not just the relationship with one another that we need to focus on, but the priorities of travelers today are also with that regards to the relationship with oneself. understanding who we are, what we do, what we what we feel matters to us. Finances. This has gone through This type of priorities have gone through, depends who you talk to. If you talk to the luxury segment, they will say, yes, my clients haven't traveled for 2 years. Therefore, they now have the money to splurge. And someone in India called it revenge travel. People going out and traveling and splurging and really going out and all out with money and luxuries. But I guess that with finances, also together with relationships and health, one of the priorities around the way we spend our money, it's really related to where does that money go? Who am I helping with this money? So the sustainability, the social impact, the relationship with the cultures. Travelers more than ever are very sensible to where the money that they spend goes. What is the ultimate purpose of your business? On the other hand, spending less money and having more experiences, not necessarily dictated by the price tag, but dictated by the experience tag, is also one of the key pillars that travelers refer to when they make travel choices now. Lastly, safety. And this is not just personal safety, this is destination safety. With tourism going to a stop, millions of jobs were lost, therefore, a lot of unemployment. When there is a lot of unemployment, there's a lot of desperate people out there, desperate people, desperate measures. So many destinations went through some highs and lows in regards to safety across their country, in their cities. And travelers are very quick at spotting those when it comes to, getting on Google. We're going to speak about it in a moment, and understanding what's going on in Maldives. Am I safe? What's going on in Mauritius? Am I safe? What's going on in the Seychelles? Do I get robbed if I walk the street by myself? So, health, relationship, finances, and safety. Four key pillars that travelers are considering today when they make their travel choices. We spoke about key lessons learned from the pandemic. I see that as lessons we've learned out of good intention, out of failures, out of success stories. And here I put for you four mega trends which you might very much reflect yourself on. And these are product centered. Why did I specify product centered? Because you take your business, your brand, your product, your tour, your hotel, and you put it at the center of that strategy. And this is what we've learned after 24 months. Market diversification. We learned it the hard way. Huh? How many in this room were dependent on China? How many in this room were dependent on, I don't want to raise hands, that's okay. But these 24 months have taught us that if we put all our eggs in one basket, we might be in for a bad surprise if something out of our control happens. Nobody would ever expect a country not to travel, let alone a country so big like China. Yes, it did happen. Dynamic budgeting. That's a very hard lesson learned. How many of you have done and redone budgets all and over again throughout the last 24 months, hoping that things will get better, hoping that things will improve, that people will travel again, and yet again another lockdown came along, and yet again another border closure came along. So many factors outside of your control. Retained workforce. Let's talk about it. How many of you have lost valuable workforce within your team? How many people have lost in the industry faith in the tourism industry to work in this industry? They said, no, not working in the tourism industry anymore. I'll become an accountant, safer. Booking flexibility, of course. How many bookings you got because you snapped them on the very last minute, or how many bookings you lost because you couldn't make your system more agile. So, what happens when a product centered strategy shifts into a traveler centric strategy? Forget about your product. For a moment, put it aside. Don't think of you like me, my hotel, my brand, my agency, my team. Think of the traveler at the center of that strategy, and make that shift with me today. That shift that basically moves you from market saturation to product diversification. Uniqueness of your destinations come along because you are not there to please another product. You are there to please a person, and a person is full of uniqueness in their very own way of being themselves. Cultural exchange, how powerful is that? I looked at the examples of the Maldives when they started developing resorts, and everybody developed the same resorts, and then the market got saturated. But then they started putting the traveler at the center of their strategy, and suddenly you could do so many more things in the Maldives that you weren't expecting to do before. Capital growth, human capital growth. People are inspired. Local people are inspired. 20 years ago, you will not have a general manager in the Maldives Maldivian. You will have a foreigner being a general manager. Today, the leadership in the tourism industry of the Maldives is Maldivian. Experience diversification, which is the key. We all talk about the experience of the travel industry. So let's embrace this new perspective. Let's learn from the past lessons. Let's make that shift. Put the traveler at the center of your strategy. And then ask yourself, so how do I do that? I prepare for you a very simple, I like images, you can tell. I prepare for you a very simple process. And today, at some point, if you want, we can do it together later on. I think we have a round table at the end of the day. Let's go through this exercise. Imagine your product today. What customer pain does your product solve? Or even better, what are the pains of today's travelers? So let's say boredom, solitude, loneliness, burnout, stress. These are the pain of today's travelers, right? And we're asking them to travel again as if nothing happened. Will they? Will they come to you? Probably. Maybe, if they feel understood, right? Your product in this process is where? Here, 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 or here. Your product sits in the pain relievers. If you have identified what are your customer pain today, you will structure your product in a way that relieves that pain and creates a gain. How many times you go somewhere, somebody wants to sell you something, you're like, what's in it for me? What do I get? This is the spirit that every single consumer today has when they approach a purchase. So you're purchasing online, in person, the travel industry, any industry. So gain creators. If you prepare something that eases a pain and creates a gain, your brand will have results that will go long way. Because your strategy is traveler centric, not product centric. Well, we moved from the very traditional way of approaching our clients, from what we can feel, what we can see, what we can read, the way we do business. We read, we watch videos, we touch things, we smell, we taste. Now it's all about what we Google, what we can Google. I asked the beautiful team of Q&A, how did you find me? How did you come to invite me to this event? Power of Google and recommendations. But That helps. Thank you. So we moved from doing business from what we feel, what we touch, what we speak, what we hear, what we taste, to what we Google. So ask yourself, if someone has to Google you today, what will they see on the very first page of Google? What images? What are your digital assets today? And let's talk about that digitalization process. A lot of the industry leaders are in denial. They don't really understand it. They don't embrace it. And if the leader of a company does not embrace the digitalization of the travel industry, how can his team follow suit? And if the team doesn't follow, how can the client do the same? So these are 4 steps that I'm happy to share with you throughout the rest of the day that will help you understand how the digitalization of the travel industry will bring you to a brand advantage. And remember, your client will not buy from you when he or she will understand you. Your client will buy from you when he or she will feel understood. Thank you very much. I wish you a wonderful, successful day. And I'll be around and happy to share with you more about the 5 steps of the digitalization of the travel industry. Thank you.